Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing some sushi inspired nails. So I'm just using sugar cookie for a nude colour for the background. Just fancy nude for the background to keep it simple. I didn't want to detract too much from the sushi. So I'm going to be doing a salmon one and a veggie one as well. I'm just going to do a second coat of that just to make sure it's fully covered and there's no see-throughy bits. Once that's cured, I'm taking nail tip gel adhesive and I'm going to be mixing this with some mega white acrylic powder. I just don't want to be going back over with gel polish afterwards because I think it'll just kind of take away from all of the details that I'm going to put in. So I'm just going to try and mix these together. It can be quite sticky, so be aware of that. You can put some gloves on and use some gel residue remover or some cuticle oil to help you with this. But I just kind of go with it and then just scrape it off the cuticle pusher in the end. And then I'm just using silicone tool just to finish it all off and kind of knead it all together. You do want to dip those silicone tools in some gel residue remover because it will make a massive difference. So I'm just going to pop that on the nail and I'm essentially going to be moulding this into almost like a 3D oval, if that makes sense. And you, like I say, you can just move it around. If you think there's any bits that haven't mixed together, you can kind of mix it together on the nail. I have just there. Just smooth it all out until you've got a shape that you're happy with, and then we're going to go in and add plenty of detail so it looks like rice, you know, like when sushi rice sticks together. So that's why I've kind of kept it as one whole thing. I have seen people who've made individual rice pieces, but I'm just showing you how to do it much quicker and much easier, especially if you don't have too much time. So I'm just taking the end of this cuticle pusher and I'm just essentially drawing the grains of rice, but just like the outside of the shape, and this does pretty much work to make it look like a big mound of sushi rice. You will find that this does self-level a little bit, so you will want to go back over some of the bits you've done right at the beginning just before you cure it as well. And I'm just going in right at the sides to kind of push the rice particles like in so we don't have too much of a perfect shape on the outside. Once that's cured, I'm taking this pure orange and a little bit of white because it would be a little bit too neon if I just left it with the pure orange, and mix that with the nail tip gel adhesive again. Like I say, it's so much easier if you don't have to paint it later. And I'm just going to mix these together again. I'm going to pop that on top of the nail, and this is going to be for the salmon. I didn't do a very good job of coating this in gel residue remover, so it did stick a little bit, but we fixed it. It's okay, don't worry guys. So I'm just going to smooth this down the nail, and I don't want this to go like over all of the side of the rice because you still want to see that popping out. I'm just going to kind of smooth it over, and I don't want it too 3D as well. I want it like 3D but not like massive because it just wouldn't be in real life. And you just want to keep dipping that in gel residue remover and it'll help you smooth out that shape as well. You might find that while you're doing this, some of the pigment kind of shifts around the nail anywhere that you've been touching. So you can just go in and wipe any of that off if you see any little orange bits. So when that's uncured, I'm taking that cuticle pusher again and just adding some delves in just to make some texture in the sushi. And here I'm just going in before it cures just to get any of that pigment off the nail. Once that's cured, I'm taking Snow White and I'm just mixing with some base coat to make it milky because I'm just going to add some detail into the sushi, but I don't want it to be really white. I want it to be a little bit softer. I'm just going to go across those diagonal lines that I made earlier and, like I say, just kind of make a milky white texture in there, and just add in some extra lines across the nail, which I'm going to soften in a second, and this will just add a bit more texture too. And then I'm just taking a brush with a tiny bit of gel residue remover on there and just kind of spread them out, soften them up a bit. And I'm just going back over and kind of doing the same thing again. Once that's cured, I'm taking some more nail tip gel adhesive and I'm just doing this across the nail. And I thought this time I would do it with paint because I want to paint texture on anyway. And I'm doing a dark colour and I didn't want that to spread on all of the white because, like I say, the pigment can run a little bit. So this is just like a nori sheet that you would get wrapped around some sushi. So I'm just doing that nice and thin and pulling it across the nail, and I'm just going to take off any excess at the edge of the nail if it's a bit too thick. And I do apologise, it's a little bit hard to see with it being clear, but once I start painting it, you'll be able to see the shape a bit better. Once that's cured, I'm taking cyanide and I'm just going to basically go over the whole entire nori sheet. And we don't necessarily have one colour that would work for a nori sheet because they're a bit textured. So I thought I'm going to go in with the green and then I'm just going to use black to add in the texture because I think that's kind of how it would be in real life, if that makes sense. It's not just like one flat colour. I did realise that the sushi didn't go quite to the edge of the nail, so I did just extend that nori sheet on one of the sides so it like kind of wraps around the nail as well, just with the gel polish. Once that's cured, I'm taking that serious black and I'm basically just kind of dabbing on some texture. Just using this ombre brush, this like small fanned brush, and this worked really, really well. And I did get it all over the nail, but it's fine because I just went in and wiped it off with a brush and some gel residue remover, and it worked really well. I'm just going to pop that into cure and then I'm just going to seal it all in with top coat. And I did this thinking that I would want it all shiny, but then once it was all shiny, I kind of changed my mind. So stick around in a minute because I am going to show you what it looks like when I do some of it matte. Because obviously like the salmon's quite shiny, but then the nori sheet's a little bit more matte and the rice is a bit more matte. So I thought I'd just play around with the textures, but this will just seal it all in anyway. Just make sure that doesn't pull in any of that lovely texture that you've made. Pop it in the lamp to cure, then we're taking ultra matte coat and I'm going over the nori sheet, the rice and the background of the nail, and I'm just going to leave the salmon shiny. This is quite a tricky bit because you're basically putting a shiny clear coat on top of another shiny clear coat, but when it isn't cured you literally can't see what you're doing, so just take your time with that. And then I decided to go back in and just add a bit of texture with a tiny bit of shiny on top of the nori sheet. Obviously you can do whatever you want, but this is just how I wanted to do it. And there's the salmon one. I think it's really cute. It's just fun, isn't it? So for the second nail, I've got the same background and I'm just going to be making some shapes in the middle. So this is the filling for the sushi. So I'm going to do some avocado, some red cabbage and some carrots. So I'm just going to do them in little squares. So obviously the avocado can just stay like relatively square because that's how it'll be chopped. And then I'll colour them in afterwards because I feel like it would just be a little bit of a faff because I want to add in a bit more dimension to them with different colours. So I'm just going to take guac and just fill in that whole entire cube. And then I'm going to go in and add some details afterwards. So I'm taking cyanide and I'm just going to be adding kind of a darker border around some of it, like you would on an avocado. And I'm just going to blend this in a little bit. And I'm just using that guac colour to blend back in to take it towards the edge. Once that's cured, I'm just making those other shapes. So like I said, I'm going to be doing some carrots here. So I'm just going to make a square again, essentially, like a cube, but then add in some texture as if it's being cut into tiny little like julienne strip type things. Do you know what I mean? If you're into cooking, you might know what I mean. But like long, thin little pieces of carrot. Next, I'm taking Tuscan Sun and just colouring all of that in, and this is just the base colour for this. And I'm just going to kind of pull that product back out from the middle of the texture because I still want to be able to see it. I don't want it to kind of fill in that 3D-ness. Then once that's cured, I'm taking Jaffa Cake and just adding a little bit more depth to that. Once that's cured, I did decide to go back in and add a bit of a lighter colour to the avocado. It just felt like it needed a little bit more contrast. And then I'm onto the red cabbage. So I'm just doing the same thing as the carrots essentially, just with different colours. So I'm taking Purple Rain once that's cured just to fill it in, and then I'm going to add some more detail. Once that's cured, I'm taking Knot again and just dabbing that on top to add some detail to it. Once that's cured, I'm going to be mixing up some of the same that I used for the sushi rice earlier, because this is just going to be for sushi rice as well. We're just doing more of a roll that's been sliced rather than one of the individual pieces. Don't ask me what the names of these types of sushi are because I love eating them, but I can never remember the different names of them. If you know loads about sushi, comment down below which different types of sushi I'm making, just to educate me and anyone else who wants to know a little bit more about sushi. Once I've mixed all that up, I'm going to be rolling it into a bit of a sausage and then just putting it around the vegetable bits. I did put too much on at first, so I did take a little bit off. And then you just want to kind of flatten it out because it would be cut into a slice, so the edge would be quite flat. So I'm just making sure I'm happy with the shape of it as I'm doing this too. This bit is like definitely the faffiest bit of the whole entire nail design, just because it takes a while and every time you touch it you're moving another bit, so just take your time with that. And then I'm just adding that texture in like I did with the previous nail. I feel like this would be a great technique for making like a strawberry texture or like other fruit textures. It just works really well, it's really effective, and it's super simple. Once that's cured, I'm taking Cyanide and some Serious Black again, and I'm just going around the vegetables to add in where the nori sheet would be. So I'm just going back over that Cyanide with the Serious Black just to add a little bit more dimension and obviously make it look more like the nori sheet on the other nail too. Once that's cured, I'm just going to mix some Clear as Day with some Serious Black, and we're going to be doing some Nigella seeds. They're like the black sesame seed looking things, and I'm just going to pop them on the side as if it's been rolled in it. And I will go back over these just to try and make them a little bit more 3D as well. Once that's cured, I'm taking Ultra Matte Coat and I'm just going over all of that just to seal it all in, and I will go back over with some shiny coat in a second too. So once that's cured, I'm taking that top coat just to go over the veggies and some of those Nigella seeds too. I think the rice looks good, quite matte and flat, and then just making those tiny bits pop with some shiny coat. And there we go, that's the second one done. I thought I'd show you them together. I think they're so cute. They're just a lot of fun. Not very practical, but totally fun. Let us know what you think down below. If you want any of the products, they'll also be tagged down below, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.